I'll pass it on to Mr. Kugelman.
Well, thank you very much, Zara. I'd like to thank, first of all, Shia Rights Watch for inviting me to speak at this conference, which is so important for all the wrong reasons, given the troubled plight of the Shia in so many parts of the world. Also, would like to thank AU, and specifically SIS, for hosting. As an SIS alum myself, it's particularly gratifying to be here. Many moons ago, I was a freshman in Professor Saeed's global world politics class. I think he may have stepped out, but so it's always nice to be back. I will be talking about Shias in Pakistan. Shias in Pakistan constitute about 20% of Pakistan's 180 million people. Pakistan is arguably one of the deadliest countries for Shias outside of the Middle East. What's particularly alarming is that the rate of increase of Shia deaths in Pakistan in recent years is really quite striking. In 2012, at least 325 Shia were killed. Last year, nearly 400 were. More and more commentators, credible commentators in Pakistan, are now using the word genocide to describe their plight. My comments will focus on the grim situation of Shias in Pakistan, a chief victim of the sectarian violence that, in my view, poses Pakistan's greatest security threat. However, I'll also identify some reasons for hope and highlight some of the heroic efforts being made in Pakistan to curb sectarian violence against Shias. So let me just first highlight 3 reasons why Shias face such a grim situation in Pakistan and why sectarian violence is such a big security threat. First of all, we need to highlight the broad reach of sectarian militancy. One of the most powerful practitioners of sectarian violence in Pakistan is an organization called the Lashkar-e-Janvi, or the LEJ. It has staged attacks in all 4 Pakistani provinces, something that few, if any, other Pakistani militant groups have done. LEJ, however, gets plenty of help from the Pakistani Taliban, which is increasingly targeting religious minorities and has claimed responsibility for a number of recent sectarian attacks. These tactics suggest a growing alliance between 2 of Pakistan's most fearsome Sunni extremist organizations. Second reason to fear for Shias in Pakistan is, quite frankly, public opinion. Few Pakistanis would embrace the anti-state Pakistani Taliban's vision of destroying the country's political system. But I would argue that many do sympathize with the underlying views of sectarian extremists. In a recent Pew poll, 41% of Pakistanis said that Shias are not Muslims. In another poll, 60% of young Pakistanis contended that Ahmadis, who belong to another minority sect of Islam, are not Muslims. In 2001, the governor of the province of Punjab, Salman Taseer, was assassinated for his public opposition to Pakistan's so-called blasphemy laws, which essentially are laws used to persecute religious minorities, including Shia. Scores of Pakistanis, including many lawyers, rallied in support of Salman Taseer's assassin, at one point showering him with roses as he made his way to court. So in my view, by expressing support for the basic idea of fueling sectarian violence, Pakistanis are indirectly conferring legitimacy on sectarian militants' activities. The third and final reason why the plight of Shias in Pakistan is so alarming is that the Pakistani state has effectively institutionalized sect-based discrimination. The Second Amendment of Pakistan's constitution, its constitution, explicitly states that Ahmadis are non-Muslims. Not surprisingly, Pakistan has few, if any, laws on the books that protect religious minorities, yet it does have these blasphemy laws which produce the opposite effect. The assassination of Salman Taseer effectively silenced much of the policy debate about religious minorities and has made reform of the blasphemy laws, much less their elimination, a political non-starter. Now, the most troubling aspect of the state's complicity in sectarianism is the nexus between sectarian extremists and the security establishment. And here I'm not going to say too much, as I don't want to steal thunder from Lisa Curtis, who's I think will be getting into this lore when she speaks in the next panel. But effectively, human rights groups have alleged that Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI, leverages these organizations to take on separatist insurgents based in the province of Balochistan. There are also documented links between sectarian fighters and the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, or PMLN, which is the political party that has long run the provincial government in Punjab and now leads the central government in Islamabad. A few years back, the law minister of Punjab admitted that his government had provided financial assistance to the family of the supreme leader of the Lashkar-e Jhangvi. His name was Malik Ishaq. In 2012, the same law minister campaigned with the leader of Sipahi Sahaba, which is the parent organization of the Lashkar-e Jhangvi. Now, given that the PMLN's political bastion in Punjab is also the stronghold of most of Pakistan's sectarian extremist groups, these linkages, while certainly disturbing, are also quite unsurprising. Predictably, sectarian militants operate with impunity in Pakistan. Ishaq, the LEJ leader, effectively lives free in Punjab. He sometimes is detained only to be released again. Suspects in sectarian attacks, sectarian violence, are rarely arrested, much less prosecuted or imprisoned. In 2012, after tombstones at Ahmadi cemeteries were desecrated, police did nothing. In many cases, police refused to come to the aid of victims altogether. After a mob set fire to homes in a Christian neighborhood of the city of Lahore last year, a report produced by the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan concluded that police had been aware of an arson threat in advance, yet neither preempted the attack nor sought to save the homes. Also last year, according to media reports, as Christian women were paraded naked by an armed mob, police arrived only, quote, after much time and offered little assistance. And then later, a legislator from the PMLN party, the ruling party, ordered police to back off because the perpetrators supported his party. So the Shia in Pakistan cannot expect much support from the PMLN-led government, though it's not like they enjoyed much support from Pakistan's previous government, led by the Pakistan People's Party, or PPP, which is the party of the late Benazir Bhutto. Though interesting research has shown that Shias in Punjab have voted for the PPP as far back as the 1990s because of the perception, which I think is an accurate one, that the PPP is more liberal and tolerant of religious minorities than most other parties are in Pakistan. Now, one might ironically assume that the Shia would get the most support from the Tehreek-e-Insaf party, the PTI, which is a conservative party led by ex-cricketer Imran Khan. Now, the PTI, more so than the PMLN or PPP, has gone out of its way to condemn the country's sectarian bloodshed and its chief instigators. After one particular LEJ bombing killed nearly 90 people in a market in Quetta, in Balochistan, Khan declared at a press conference, quote, "I tell you by name, Lashkar-e Jhangvi, there can be no bigger enemy of Islam than you," unquote. He also accused the LEJ of exhibiting, quote, "the worst kind of enmity toward Islam." This is language. This type of strong language is rarely used by the PPP or the PMLN. Khan has even endorsed Shia demands for targeted operations against religious militants. Now, the PTI is not in the governing coalition, though it does run the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is in northwest Pakistan bordering Afghanistan. Still, let's not be naive here. It's important to emphasize that the PTI has no plans to take aim at the root causes of sectarian violence. And so, for example, reforming, much less repealing, Pakistan's blasphemy laws is a move no political party in Pakistan dares make. Also, many Shias are suspicious of Imran Khan because of his support for talks with the Pakistani Taliban and other gestures perceived as sympathetic to religious militants. And these suspicions intensify when high-ranking officials from his party share the stage with hardline Islamist figures during rallies of the Pakistan Defense Council, which is essentially a collective of conservative religious parties that goes around the country making speeches. A recent video produced by a Shia rights group has captured the contempt. I actually should have tried to play it here. Captures the contempt that that Shias in Pakistan harbor toward the PTI and toward the PMLN as well. One Shia cleric, who admittedly may not enjoy a large following, but still important to highlight, he's peddled a very elaborate conspiracy theory involving Saudi Arabia and the ISI colluding to install Khan as the leader of a new, quote, Saudi Wahhabi Islamic State of Pakistan. So, not surprisingly, Shias in Pakistan have taken matters into their own hands, and they've mobilized politically. Before last year's national election in Pakistan, a collaborative of Pakistani Shia religious scholars announced that the establishment of a Shia Solidarity Council to promote harmony among the country's Shia. It even registered as a political party and contested the elections. It did not do particularly well, which is really because of its lack of resources and because of the general tendency of religious parties in Pakistan, religious political parties in Pakistan, not to fare very well in elections. Still, all this said, let's now look at the glass as perhaps half full, not half empty. There is some reason for hope, I think, and I may be overly idealistic here, but I think it's important to highlight that Pakistanis are doing things, private Pakistanis, not the government. Pakistanis are doing things to help Shias and other besieged minorities. So I'll close by highlighting briefly the contributions of three heroic Pakistanis. I've written about these three previously in an article for Foreign Policy a few months ago, so just briefly highlight them now. These are Pakistanis who not only deplore sectarianism, but they have also taken dramatic steps to combat it. And in fact, one of them lost his life for his efforts. Most critically, perhaps, their countrymen have supported their efforts. First person I'll refer to is someone named Zahid Iqbal. In Islamabad, on the outskirts of Islamabad, there's a very extraordinary structure, which is the first sect-free mosque in Pakistan. And Zahid Iqbal is the businessman behind it. He told the AP, the Associated Press, in an interview recently that we, quote, "We don't belong with any sect of Islam, we only belong to Islam." So the main prayer hall in the mosque can hold about 350 people. It has a religious library. It's soon going to be opening a women's section. There's a welcoming sign that proclaims, quote, "This mosque does not discriminate between any sects and welcomes all Muslims." Iqbal has sent mosque officials to other mosques where they preach messages of tolerance and unity. When I talked to him, he told me that he eventually plans to establish branches of the mosque elsewhere in Pakistan. And he told me that Islam means mercy, that is to do good to others. So through this mosque, I'm trying to live up to this message of Islam. Second person to talk about is a young activist named Gibran Nasser. Last fall, after more than 100 Christians were killed in an attack on their church in Peshawar, city in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, Christians and Muslims formed human chains around churches in several major Pakistani cities. Participants included muftis, Christian clergy, women, children, and they all displayed banners that said "One Nation, One Blood." So Gibran Nasser was the guy leading this campaign. He's an activist and a lawyer who works for an organization called Pakistan for All. At an event, at one of these human chain events in Lahore, he announced that the terrorists showed us what they do on Sundays, and here we are showing them what we do on Sundays. We unite. So when I talked to him, he said that the intention here is to send out a message that every house of God, whether a church, temple, or synagogue, is as sacred as a mosque, and hence protection of these places of worship is the responsibility of every Muslim. He says he was inspired by the human chains formed by Muslims to protect Coptic Christians praying in Egypt, which, as we know, is another nation where religious minorities are persecuted and attacked. Nasser has also organized assistance for Shia victims of sectarian attacks. He recently ran as an independent for a parliamentary seat representing the city of Karachi, the financial capital, largest city in Pakistan. In his official campaign videos and media interviews, he constantly condemned sectarianism. He also campaigned for Ahmadi rights, which is a nearly unfathomable cause for any Pakistani politician to take up. Ultimately, he was not elected, but he says he's going to run again. Third, and most tragically, a gentleman named Ghulam Mustafa. Last August, extremists boarded a bus in Baluchistan province and killed more than a dozen Shias who were on the bus. They also gunned down Ghulam Mustafa, who was a Sunni passenger who dared to confront them. Now, he reportedly said to the gunman, "Why are you doing this? Why do you want to kill these people? Islam does not allow the killing of innocent people." And shortly thereafter, he was led to the side of the road and executed alongside the Shia bus riders. So while these three young men have fought sectarianism directly, they've also had supporting casts, the staff that run Iqbal's mosque and guide its worshippers, the participants in the Human Chain campaign run by Nasser, and several other Sunni bus riders who, like Mustafa, refused to identify Shia passengers. And according to several media accounts, 2 other Sunnis died along with Mustafa on that bus. So this support extends across Pakistan more broadly as well. Iqbal told me that his mosque has not received a single threat, and that the overall response has been, quote, encouraging and supportive. Nasser told me that his advocacy has generated considerable support from religious scholars. He also said that 3 major political parties have invited him to join their ranks and continued to advise and support him even after he declined. So I was struck by the responses that I got to this article in which I highlighted what these 3 folks did. Every day, Pakistanis were contacting me, telling me these guys are heroes, they wish they could do more. They wish they could do what these men had done. I even heard from an organization of retired servicemen who told me that they've been providing private security at besieged churches when the state refuses to do so. More recently, after attacks on Hazara Shias earlier this year, I heard a number of stories of common Pakistanis converging on hospitals where the wounded were to offer support, gifts, candy, and these Pakistanis were, for the most part, not Shias. They were Sunnis. So clearly, sectarian tolerance has a constituency in Pakistan. To be sure, it is a relatively small constituency, but I think that it's still one worth highlighting. And still, for it to get larger, there needs to be more awareness of the plight of Shias in Pakistan. And I think for that there needs to be more, I know there needs to be more information exchange and education, which are the very themes of this important conference today. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kugelman. I'm now going to move on to our third and final speaker for the first panel, Mr. T. Kumar, who is the Director of International Advocacy for Amnesty International USA. He has worked in several Asian and African countries and served as a human rights monitor in many Asian countries, as well as in Bosnia, Afghanistan, Guatemala, and South Africa. He has also served as a director of several refugee camps. Among other things, he is frequently asked to testify before Congress about human rights issues. So now I'm going to turn you.
Thank you very much. Amnesty International is pleased to be here to talk about a topic or an issue which we have never addressed before. What we meant is, we have spoken a lot about abuses, about attack on minorities, Muslims, or political prisoners, political opposition. But on Shia Muslims, we have never spoken out, or we have never been invited. Oh, I never heard that there is an event happening. So I'm glad that you are organizing it. It's a very tricky issue. From the human rights point of view, it's a very tricky issue. When we analyze a particular situation where human rights abuses are taking place, we look into see What's the root causes? And what should be done to stop it? What are the pressure points? And who is behind it? So when I look at Shias and abuses that are happening against Shias, one thing comes to my mind, that this is, obviously everyone knew the answer, that it's a sectarian, a conflict between Muslims. So these abuses' root cause is conflict in a religion, in this case Islam, and intolerance by the majority of whatever the sect or whatever you call it, towards the minority is the root cause. I can go on with examples from countries, and you can conclude yourself. Who is responsible for abusing Shia Muslims are no one other than Muslims themselves. It's sad reality. So as non-Muslims, I am not a Muslim. And as a human rights organization, how you deal with this is the major question as outsiders. So first, why don't I go around giving you a little bit of taste of Shias being targeted and singled out in countries. If I missed any country where Muslims are minority, I'm not talking about Shia Muslims, Muslims are minority, please raise the issue during the question and answer time. So I want to start with the world's largest Muslim country, Indonesia. It's a very tolerant country, extremely tolerant from the Islamic perspective. Their Shias have been singled out. They were killed by the mobs. Governments rarely protect them. And there are public officials making statement, this is deviant Islam and we can't tolerate it. About 6 months ago, a couple of hundred Shias were attacked in one village. And they ran into shelter, actually they're internal refugees. And they were denied food and medicine by the government. And even the government, there are liberal government ministers, they kept their mouth shut, at least to speak up. So we have to speak up because they are failing. And one of the conditions the local government leader said was, if you convert to Sunni Islam, then you can go to your houses. So it's an intra-party, that's what I'm trying to get at. It may be tolerant in a society level, but government also go along with that because governments reflect the majority will of the people, in this case majority Sunni feeling. Let's move on to Malaysia. Majority Muslim country, not overwhelming majority, around 60% Muslims. Again, the country that I noticed was less tolerant to Shiism is Malaysia. I have family there, so I can understand much better there. There, to be a Malay, you have to be a Sunni Muslim. We can understand to be a Malay, you have to be a Muslim. But they are saying to be a Malay, you have to be a Sunni Muslim. And Shias can't even worship freely. They have been arrested, charged for spreading Shiaism. Spreading can have different meanings. Talking to someone about the religion could be interpreted as spreading the Shia Islam. And only yesterday or day before, I heard even the Facebook, which have Shia contents are being targeted, not yet banned yet, but there are reports that there are calls to ban Facebook that spread Shiaism. So in Malaysia, it is institutionalized government policy that's going after one sect within the Islam. Then move to Pakistan. A previous speaker spoke. Again, it's a Muslim majority country. Shias have been singled out by different groups. The bigger problem is the governments, no matter which government, never took serious actions. They have taken some actions to protect them and to ensure they are physically not harmed, and also they are freely allowed to worship. Then there is Bahrain. The difference in Bahrain compared to their previous countries, he said here, Shias are the majority. It's an Islamic country, Sunnis are minority. In other countries, Sunnis are majority. So here we are seeing a South African dynamics, apartheid. The minority run the show and suppress the majority. But again, the conflict is between Muslims. No outsiders are involved in this. You can take other non-Muslim countries, like India, for example. The attack on Muslims are against Muslims. When you see the Gujarat riots, the Hindu mobs did not go around looking for Sunnis, or they did not look around for Shias. They looked for Muslims. So when it comes to majority non-Muslim countries, Shias become equally treated. Actually, it's very irony. You get equal treatment as a Muslim, got beaten up, killed, raped, whatever the abuses are. The only example I can think of other religions, of course each religion have their own differences and fights. One is of course Northern Ireland, Catholic Protestant fight. It may have a different colonial angle, but at least it turned out to be Catholics versus Protestants. But that did not spread beyond Northern Ireland. That did not go to London, that did not go to any European countries. But in this case, Shia Muslim versus Sunni Muslim issue is spreading, and it touches everywhere. And where Shias get singled out and abused and targeted are where Sunni Muslims are in power. Not Hindu groups, not Christian groups. You go to France, okay, you can accuse France of not allowing veil, or how do you call it, hijab in public places or schools or wherever. But they didn't discriminate on one sect, they discriminate against Muslims themselves. Even in this country, there were complaints after 9/11 about racial profiling. If you have a Muslim name, you could be singled out. I personally saw, when I was returning from a flight in Dallas airport, so about 30, 40 people were standing in one side. I thought, what's going on? Because here we are in a line, and suddenly I saw most of them were wearing hijab, and they're all Middle East flight came, and they were like singled out. American officials did not look for who is a Shia, who is a Sunni. So the challenge here today is Muslims as Muslims. How to live together, how to practice together. Or you may have differences, but at least how to respect and not to hurt anyone. The irony is that when there is the attack on, say in Pakistan, it was discussed, the viciousness of attack against Shias is much, much less than the viciousness of attack on Hindus. It's a totally different religion. Totally different religion. No, nothing, no connection at all. Islam came from Middle East, Hinduism, Hindus religion base, Buddhism, Hinduism base is India. But the viciousness is against Shia or Ahmadis, that's a different topic. So the challenge from the human rights point of view is obviously we will make noise. We will hold governments accountable or put pressure like in Indonesia when they were blocking food and medicine. We made a big deal. But when we meet with Indonesian embassy officials, we always say it's your brothers and sisters you are abusing. And we are not saying literally, any citizen should be your responsibility. This is pretty much your religion. You always come and complain to us, human rights organizations, and when Muslims get targeted, we are less critical. Oh, you are Western organization, I'm not West, but that's the way they criticize us to defend themselves. So the challenge today for all of you and all of us, for all of us who are non-Muslims, is to be mindful. Because I was nervous what language I am going to speak here, because I can't utter a word that can hurt Muslims without intentionally. I don't know the language of, Holy Prophet, you say peace be with him and all the rest. The point is, when you're talking about the different religious issues, you have to be extremely cautious. So we had to be extremely, I hope I didn't make any mistakes so far in mentioning Islam and other things. We have to be mindful, but we have to, at the same time, be extremely vocal when fundamental human rights and humanitarian issues have been taken into account. Like imprisonment, torture, there was a question about Bahrainis. We campaign. We campaign not because they are Shia Muslims, by the way, I can guarantee you that. Can guarantee you 100%. When we campaign, when we make noise on even Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, or Bahrain, we never say, oh, Shia Muslim. We say, they belong to Shiaism, but they are human beings. You protect them. But our influence from outside perspective is limited. So this is internal Islamic issue. So you, or majority of you who are Muslims here, I don't know how many Shia, how many Sunni, you have a responsibility. Unless you deal with this head on, you can have a difference of opinion, you can have different interpretations. But the bottom line is, because there are difference of opinion and difference of interpretations, that did not give license for the other group to abuse, physically abuse, discriminate, and treat them as less human than you. That's all. We are not saying, I've told you we are outsiders. You have to. And we are not saying you have to merge or anything. That's not the issue. Issue is that you both, including Shias, you have to be careful, by the way. Iran is a Shia majority country. Iraq is a Shia majority country. Bahrain, if there is democracy, it will be a Shia majority country. Again, you also have a responsibility to ensure that Sunni Muslims are treated and protected and respected. Not because they are Muslims, because you are fellow human beings. Until you all stand up, we as outsiders have only limited scope. We can make noise. Because the root cause is you to come to an agreement. That's what I'm really surprised. OIC, Organization Islamic Conference, should take a lead on this. It's like a family feud. They should take a lead on it. So we hope in future Muslims as Muslims get together and solve this problem. One irony before I close. He said, usually people turn on each other when there is no common attack on them, when they were not singled out. But the sad reality is that as Muslims, people get singled out around the world. Because you are Muslims in India, you are Muslim, you get singled out. In Sri Lanka, even halal food is not allowed. They did not go and say only Sunni Muslims should not have, or Shia Muslims. When they attack mosques, they attack all the mosques. Burma, 969 movement, it's a democracy there. They are having a special campaign. The Buddhist monks are having special campaign, boycotting Muslim shops. You are talking about the monks. It's different religions. They did not differentiate Shia and Sunni. So in that sense, all Muslims get together, or any country like South Africa before independence, all the Africans were united. The minute they got independent, they are fighting now. In South Sudan, you can understand now that there is fight going on, because the independence came, then the differences pop up. The only difference to my knowledge, I am sorry, it's among Muslims. When you are under attack, you are also fighting among yourself. So we hope, as Muslims, you have a dialogue with Sunni Muslims, and Sunni Muslims reach out to Shia Muslims. And if that happens, we as outsiders will have very little work to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of our speakers, very informative, and you've made us very mindful of so many things. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Now I would like to take questions if anyone has. Yes, Dr. Sajdina. Yeah.
Thank you very much for both the presentation, one from Pakistan, one about the whole human rights situation. I think that outside influence is quite dominant in Africa and also in South Asia, and now also in Romania and some other places where the Gulf embassies are offering money, to the local population, Muslim population, to really change the way the mosque, are run, and the preachers will be sent to them. In other words, both in Pakistan and in other parts of the world, we find that the role played by the preachers is extremely sensitive. And if we don't know how to reach out that element, because this element is influenced by the Arabic influence of Saudi Arabia. We have Sipahi Sahaba in Pakistan. It's funded by the Saudis. So petrodollars are really pumping into the sectarian violence that is taking place. And who are the actual representatives? These are the preachers. So I'm looking at the curriculum of the madrasa, of the schools. But we also find that it's not only the curriculum that would change the minds of the people to see others as human beings, but I think it is the preacher's role. And this is where I think the whole thrust of the human rights search should be moving, because if we don't re-educate, I'm working on the re-radicalization program in Pakistan. How do we get the youngsters away from sectarianism and violence by creating different kinds of school, vocational schools, and getting the mothers involved with us? We are working with the mothers. If we can teach the mothers that your son is going to be dangerous, both to yourself and to others, then that's the way, we can get her support. And building vocational schools is also providing them with jobs. So human rights issues are to be looked at different levels. At MIT, there was this program about, women waging peace. And the Algerian delegate said that they did research with the Algerian youths, 16 to 17 years old, and they would ask them, who are the Shia? And the answer was, humul kuffar. They are kafirs, they are non-believers. Now, if this is the situation in Algeria, which is a secular state, imagine how much other states must be doing. So in other words, the preachers are really important in the case of Pakistan especially, and India also. They have not been Indian. I think the secular system has not allowed them to do the damage, you see, that you find in Pakistan, which is an Islamic state. So we are really confronting and encountering extreme problems in the human rights which are being violated every moment, every moment.
Hi, assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters. I am in a sort of unique situation because I'm a Shia Muslim convert. But I had a question for both of you. What do you see the role of the state of Israel playing in these conflicts?
I don't know. To be honest with you, one thing I can tell you, when there is division, people take advantage. So I'm just, without knowing, I can tell you, if I'm an Israeli intelligence, I'll take advantage of it.
I don't really know how to answer that question as well. I would argue that there's no particular role played by Israel in this in the Pakistan context.
My name is Shia Muslims. I represent Shia International, which is based in Washington, D.C. Heard some good comments here from the speakers and from the previous speakers as well. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I was raised in an environment where I had to spend all my school life in a convent school. And we all know what a convent school is, right? So I'm a Shia Muslim, alhamdulillah. I think I have heard a lot of things here. I would just like to make a few comments and then ask a question. Number one is I heard about 20% Shia Muslims in Pakistan. I just want to make a correction here, 28%. There might be a typo here. It might have printed 0 instead of 8. The Pew Research, the people who do that, they do not go in the very interior of Pakistan where there are people who do not declare themselves as Shia Muslims because of their lives, because of the fear of life. I'm not even talking about those Sunni Muslims who accept the beliefs of Shia Muslims and they don't declare them openly that they believe what Shia believes. This 28% is entirely Shia Muslims who declare themselves as Shias, not including the ones who do not declare themselves as Shia Muslims. Number two is Dr. Sajadini has commented a very good point he brought up. We know the funding is coming from a country called Arabia. I tend not to call it Saudi Arabia because it is not their country. The family of Saud is not the owner of that country. So Arabia, that's where the funding is coming. And I think the root cause is that funding. If we cut off that funding, somehow that funding will not go to the madrasas, which are basically schools where they teach how to kill people of other religion, not just Shia Muslims, but non-Muslims as well. So the cutting of that funding is more critical than anything else, and I would like to ask our guest speakers here, how do you think that funding could be cut from that part of that world coming into Pakistan, but also indirectly in the US as well, and in some other countries as well? This is an international conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen, not just against Shia Muslims, but against anybody who does not believe in Takfiri and Wahhabi sect of religion. I'm not calling them sect of Islam, because personally I believe that they are not part of Muslims or part of Islam. That is a totally different sect which does not have anything to do with Muslims or Islam. Totally independent sect. And as far as the 41% of people are concerned who said that they believe that Shia are not Muslims, I tend to disagree with that. I have only one friend in Pakistan right now out of 22 friends who is a Shia Muslim. The rest of the 21 are all Sunni Muslims. And when I go and visit Pakistan, they treat me just like brother, just like we are. And we have always been just like brothers. So my question to you is, that first question that I raised, what in your opinion is the best way to get rid of that funding? Can US play a significant role in supporting that idea, so that this terrorism wave, which is across the countries, not just in Pakistan or Bahrain or Kuwait, can that be stopped? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Those are some good comments and good points that you raise. Unfortunately, I don't see any way that the Saudi funding to Pakistan is going to end. And it's really for a very simple reason, a geopolitical one. The Pakistan-Saudi relationship is one of the strongest, most ironclad relationships in the world. There's been military cooperation for a number of years, intelligence cooperation. There are few what you could consider safe, immutable bilateral relationships in the world that you just can't see ever collapsing. And the Pakistan-Saudi one is one of them. When you look at the current government in Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif and his family is very close to the House of Saud. When Nawaz Sharif was in exile for a number of years, he spent a lot of time in Saudi Arabia. There was. You may recall that during the previous government in Pakistan, there was a lot of talk about starting an energy pipeline with Iran. And yet, with the new government coming to power, the Nawaz Sharif government, much of that talk has ended. And that's because the Sharif government is very close to the Saudis and knows that Saudi Arabia wants nothing to do with an Iran-Pakistan pipeline. So my point here is I'm just very skeptical. And as to whether there's a role the U.S. can play, no, unfortunately. Certainly the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have their own very interesting relationship, but the United States doesn't have the leverage, and quite frankly, I don't think it has the desire to try to get into this, just because the U.S.-Pakistan relationship is a very troubled one as well. So certainly we could talk about citizen efforts, private efforts. At the end of the day, it would have to come down to states, to governments, trying to do something about this funding. And the geopolitical realities are just too strong, I think, to make one think that there could be any sort of change to those funding flows.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break and then resume for the second panel. So the final question right here at the front.
Thank you. As you know, in American foreign policy, there are some different players, major players. And we see that, for example, in some cases, White House has its own vision about a particular case. The Defense Department of State has its own Senate or Congress. Do you think that there are some differences between the viewpoints of these players regarding the violation of human rights of Shia people, particularly in Pakistan and in Bahrain? For example, if is White House, for example, more desirable for protecting the rights of Shia people in Bahrain, or for at the same time, for example, Department of Defense is against any particular intervention in that country in benefit of Shia people? how do you describe the atmosphere of different viewpoints of these organizations towards these issues?
Directed. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that just because I don't really follow Bahrain. Certainly there are key government, U.S. government agencies that take a very strong interest in these issues, and one of them is going to be represented on the next panel. But beyond that, I don't really feel comfortable. I mean, the Defense Department, just because of its ambit, wouldn't really take such matters into strong consideration, I would think. The State Department, certainly, there would be more sympathy to these things, but I don't really follow Bahrain enough and the various policy deliberations over it to be able to answer that conclusively.